Hello, everyone. welcome, welcome to the weekly stream, which I've decided to name Live Stream Sunday. Um, I'm here. I have a guest for the first time. Here with Magdalene Rose. Is that how you say that?
Yeah, that is. Yes.
From the YouTube channel Super Princess Tea Party. I feel like
Hello.
probably some of you have heard of her. Um, uh, that she hers the right pronoun, right? Just to be
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Okay.
Pretty basic like that.
Yeah. Anyway, you can give the chat a brief introduction of yourself if you'd like, and tell them what you're up to, what you do.
Yes, how awkward. Well, I do a variety of things on my channel. I've never really been able to, I wanted to keep things light. I like to keep things fun and happy, but unfortunately, I'm so opinionated about politics. I was not able to shut up about it, and so eventually, slowly over time, my channel became more of like a progressive political channel and talking
Yeah.
about lots of different things. I have a show called Dear Venus where we talk about like sort of mental health, and then I have like one-off shows where I talk about very specific things. I have a show called Tea with Mags, which is sort of whatever is my fancy at the time. And then I have these big video essays where I talk about Republicans and Donald Trump and fun things like that. And that's what I do. I'm also an artist and a game developer and all sorts of other crap. Not relevant.
That's cool. That's actually like similar to me. I used to make a lot of videos about like random stuff and just fun videos, and then just slowly over time, it just became like all about social issues and politics.
Right. It is. Yeah, it's hard to look away once you you start paying attention. If everything else sort of fades into the background, it's really hard to pay attention to when these incredibly important things are happening.
Yeah. Well, so we are here today. The topic for today is talking about debating. As you can tell from the title of the stream, there's been a lot of sort of talk about people like debating and having discussions with everyone from like anti-feminists to conservatives to just pure like actual alt-right, pure actual white supremacists, white nationalists, that type of thing. And there's a debate on like if we should be doing that, and also if we do it, is it useful or is it helpful? And I guess I don't know that we have like super strong disagreements about this, but I think we probably do have differences on some parts of this. But
Hmm.
do you have
Yeah.
like, I guess, your basic like
Right. Yeah.
opinion on that?
Well, so it's difficult, right? Because I see the concern of like debating the alt-right, because really the biggest concern with people that people have is that you don't want to help platform them, like you don't want to help bring attention to their cause. You don't want to, especially you don't want to bring any sort of financial gain to the stuff that they're peddling. And so I definitely see that as like a valid concern. And where you and I kind of disagreed, I would never want to call this like a debate, right?
Yeah.
It's not. No. But we kind of came to different conclusions generally on the same side. What happened recently with ContraPoints is that
Mhm.
she's been invited to go to this conservative event to talk about issues with Blair White and I believe Theron Meyer, who are two other trans YouTubers,
Mhm.
and it's brought up a lot of anger and a lot of suspicion, which I think is valid considering the other people who are going, considering that it's a conservative event, and people were really upset with her. But ultimately, what I ended up feeling was that there's no really real way to like win and get away without any sort of problem. But it is, I think, better for her to go than to not go.
Right. What do you mean when you say there's no way to win?
Right. Yeah, I'm not explaining myself very well, aren't
Well, that's
I?
fine.
Well, so what I think what a lot of progressive people want a lot of the time is they want a sort of judo maneuver where they can have somebody who's a conservative shit peddler, basically, who is doing something crappy, who is, peddling some sort of propaganda crap. And they want some way to stop that situation from happening while also not giving them any um, platform or attention. And I don't think that that's really possible. You either have to
Mhm.
engage it or you have to not engage it. And both have sort of losing, they have losing sides to that. There's not 100% one way or the other.
So I guess the thing is like, it's like they're not going to stop whether you debate them or not. So it's
Mhm.
like, I guess the argument would be, I don't know if I would necessarily make this argument, but I think the argument would be, so what's the point of like, if your problem is platforming them, what's the point of platforming them? Or are you arguing that it has the potential to actually change them or make them stop doing what they're doing?
Mhm.
'Cause I think a lot of people would argue that, at least for some people, that that's not going to happen.
Right, and I totally agree with those people because especially I can't really say much about Theron Meyer because I'm not too familiar with her work, but I'm fairly familiar with Blair White's work, and like she's a huckster, like
Hmm.
she is. I've seen enough to be like, you're
Yeah.
all right. You're not being entirely honest here. And so I don't think that there's any way that ContraPoints could lay a mighty amount of reason on her and she'd be like, gosh, you're right. How wrong I've been. Because I don't really think that she cares whether or not what she's saying is right. She cares about the sort of money and validation and things that she's getting from that, which, perhaps as a transgender person who might struggle to find steady employment, I can understand how they would, want that. But no, that's not really much of an excuse for being a shitty conservative huckster. What am I saying? But the point is not that when ContraPoints is debating or having a talk with Blair White, she's not really. What she's having a discussion with is the audience.
Hmm.
And like Blair White is bringing an argument to the table that is disingenuous and stupid. And ContraPoints, in my experience, is not. I've seen quite a few of her videos and read a lot of her stuff. And you're really talking to the audience, and whether or not the audience is full of, people who are never going to change their mind, that's sort of unknowable. And
Hmm.
there's way more variety of people who are coming into this, maybe genuinely ignorant. Maybe they've been stuck in a small town their whole life. You have a lot more potential to do good for those people than Blair White, who's like a salesman, basically.
Yeah, I think that's the part that I have trouble with is like, I mean, I definitely acknowledge that that's a thing. And I think like the last time ContraPoints debated Blair White, which was like a huge shit show.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
um, but she later came back and said, a couple people messaged me and said, hey, you opened me up to things I haven't thought about before. So stuff like that does happen. But
Right.
I guess what I'm struggling with is it worth it? Like, is that potential, does that outweigh the other side where you're exposing more people to the people, exposing like someone like Blair White's nonsense to more people that would, you know, be receptive to it?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess like, you know, like for example, if the same amount of people on each sides, like if enough a certain amount of people like were on ContraPoint side and the same amount of people were on Blair White's side, I don't know if that's worth it. That's
Mm-hmm.
like maybe we just like back off. But maybe, maybe those people would get that anyway somehow, and maybe, you know, I don't know, maybe those people would be inevitable, but the other people wouldn't, and that's why
Mm-hmm.
that would be
Yeah.
okay.
And I can definitely see people's concern with that. Honestly, when it comes to like ContraPoints going to a conservative event and having a discussion with Blair White and Theron Meyer and all these other conservatives, I don't see any point. I don't see the point in like any progressive person going to something like that, because basically what ContraPoints is going to have to do is start from like ground zero. She's going to have to start with like, what is gender? Let's go back to kindergarten.
Yeah.
Like these people have not a lot of the time, and I used to live in the like very, very deep South, and I've experienced like the shit of it. Like, so,
Mhm.
and so many of these people genuinely don't know any better, and that is shocking.
Yeah.
Or are just beginning to know better and feel sort of weird about it, but like maybe their whole family is conservative instead. They don't really. They're feeling it out. That's college is a place where people get their minds blown, and I think that there's no real point in a progressive person going to that event, but going for her to go there and talk to other conservative people in a conservative audience, that I think does have value.
Yeah. So do you think there's a limit to that? Like, or do you think that just there's value in challenging anybody? Like, like even, as far as like Nazis and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, that's a hard one, right? Because it's like the question is the difficulty is, should you even validate it? Like, does it even dignify a response?
Yeah.
That's the question. Does it dignify a response? And whether or not it's right is not really, or it's like there's any value to what they're saying, because of course they're Nazis. Of course, there's no fucking value to it. But the question is it big enough a problem that it needs to be addressed? Is it big enough of an issue where even though it's stupid and even though there's no factual information in it, does it need to be addressed anyway? But of course, gosh, yeah, I mean that's sort of a head scratcher, because like, are people who are sympathetic to Nazis going to hear you out at all? You know?
Yeah. Well, the thing about Nazis is I don't think you have to like be a Nazi for a Nazi to make sense to you.
Right.
And those might be the people that could possibly be reached through reason. But the thing about that is, like, for example, like if there's a big, public debate between a Nazi and someone else,
Mhm.
and maybe the Nazi just gets like, by most standards, just gets annihilated.
Mhm.
But if there's like one guy in the audience that's like, hey, that Nazi made sense, and I think I'll become a Nazi now. I mean, that's oversimplifying,
Mhm.
but like, to me, that's like really bad, and I don't want that to happen. Like,
Right. Yeah, and definitely neither would I. Like, it's this difficulty of like, you have to, some person said it in the comments just a second ago, and it's very apt. Like, if you don't engage these conversations, these like stupid, shitty, incredibly racist, bigoted conversations, they're just going to like fester and
mhm.
spread to other people, regardless of whether or not you're engaging it or not. Uh, that's a crazy thing that we've had happen in our sort of friend circle recently, is like we sort of fell out of line with a different, a sort of overlapping friend circle, and then we came back and noticed that they would all gone extremely conservative, and we were like, what
Mhm.
happened? And it's because they were consuming completely different media for like 5 years, and
Yeah.
it like there was a huge shift, and nobody had really questioned or poked holes in those arguments for 5 years or so. And then suddenly it's like it just spread throughout that entire, it's very shocking, unpleasant experience to find that.
Yeah. And that's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, is the idea of this stuff festering. Because I guess the concept is, if you don't platform something, if you don't let people be exposed to something, then it'll fizzle out or something. But
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't seem to be true.
Well,
Like,
people, especially with the internet,
yeah.
people will always find a platform. They're always going to find a way to get their message out,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
unfortunately.
And it comes to a point where it's like, you know, to say like ContraPoints is platforming Blair White, but it's like Blair White already has a huge platform. So, I feel like being platformed is not her problem. It's not,
Mhm.
I don't think, I think we're beyond like deplatforming her. I don't think that's like a possibility. So,
Right. Similar to like Milo Yiannopoulos, who was like, he's such a complete fucking tool, right? And he
uh-huh.
was being very destructive and saying and doing all these horrible things. But ultimately, none of us had the platform, the power to deplatform him, except the Republican, the
Yeah,
RNC. Suddenly,
right.
they're like, "Excuse me, no, pedophile," and that's what ultimately has basically ended his career. Is this? Is the Republicans saying, no, they were the ones who had the power to do that, not us. Um, I do appreciate like messing up his name constantly on Twitter, though. Whenever I do feel the need to mention him, I'm just like, Shiloh Slapobotomist, because I don't want him to be able to find it in the, when he's narcisurfing on Twitter,
Right.
checking for his name.
Well, don't you think it's a good thing that Milo got destroyed, basically?
Oh, yes. Yes, I do. Because he like the difficulty with people like Milo is that I don't think that he believes anything that he says. So
Mhm.
somebody said it in the comments earlier. You can't debate a Nazi. There's nothing
Right.
to debate, and it's true because
Yeah.
there's nothing to debate. They are, there's like a genuine disconnect in what is important for like the future of humanity, and
Hmm.
if you can't get to that point, there's suddenly nothing more to talk about. Like you're either interested in like equal rights for humanity or you're not, and things diverge from there. There's nothing to talk about.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like, but I think I would make that argument for a lot of this other stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but maybe not all of it, but I don't know. I think one of my problems with like sort of this movement of like reactionary, like, I don't know, it like borders on conservative, but
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these people call themselves leftists, but
Oh,
um,
classical liberals.
right. But a lot of it, I think a lot of it is like based in sort of like denial of like facts, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And especially a lot of when it comes to like gender and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of the like people like Blair White and people that are talking about this, they're just literally like misrepresenting the science and stuff around it.
Yeah.
And you know, if you have a debate and you say like, hey, actually that's wrong,
Mm-hmm.
like it seems like that should be the end of the debate. But so it's like, how do you debate that? What do you say in that situation?
Right. Well, I mean, you can't. I mean, and that's the difficulty there is right. You can't really debate Blair White because what you're basically doing is you're like debating a billboard.
Hmm.
She's just putting something up to be consumed by a conservative audience, and you can't. All you can do is basically take everything she said and be like, actually, no, actually, these are the facts about that, and try to disseminate that to her audience as much as possible. Because your audience or my audience, a progressive audience, already knows she's full of shit.
Yeah.
We don't need to be informed about how completely full of shit Blair White is. We know, but they might not know, and it's hard because you have to remember that everyone who's a conservative is not like the type of conservatives that you or I might interact with online, where you're just like, God damn, they're like yelling at you. They're very like hardcore in their beliefs. There are a lot of people who are more fluid. They're more just sort of, there's a lot of ignorance out there that comes from just like your environment and your family and things like that.
Hmm.
And so uh, all you can do is try to reach those people before they get pushed to the fringes where they're suddenly sympathizing with white supremacists or are white supremacists themselves.
Yeah. Another problem I have is the whole sort of like the spectacle of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess maybe that's just part of the package. But I just feel like the whole like it's like almost like a wrestling pay-per-view. It's like tonight at 8, watch these people go at it,
Right.
and and I feel like that sort of almost like diminishes the the seriousness of it,
Hmm.
and it makes it less likely for people to take it seriously.
Hmm.
I don't know. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I think a lot of people do get sucked into that, like tonight at 8, ContraPoints versus Blair White. And I do want to clarify that she clarified on her Twitter that it wasn't actually a debate; it was a discussion. And so like, but who knows? I can't imagine. Ultimately, I can only imagine that ending in like her refuting a whole bunch of like dumb crap that Blair White starts saying at her. Again, I can't really speak about Theron Meyer because I'm not too familiar with her work. But you know, it's yeah, it's the spectacle of it does bring people in. That's why they do it.
Yeah,
That's something that the right has always really been great at, is spectacle and hyperbole and sort of the being the cool guys, being the cool ones, not like academic nerds who know shit.
right.
And that stuff brings people in, and it's frustrating and it's puzzling to people who are progressives, especially academics, because they don't understand why and how people could be bought in by that sort of thing. But they can. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, I don't know, the whole thing is frustrating to me. That's one of the reasons why I don't participate in it. It's like
Mhm.
I don't know how many times I've been like challenged to a debate, like come debate me on my channel. It's like
Yeah.
no, no, I'm not gonna do that.
Right.
But it's like the thing is like by doing that, they give this air that they're like they're open to debate,
Hmm.
and they get to and even if you agree, they get to say like, well, I I'm engaging with the other side.
Right. And they're
That,
not really. It's completely dishonest. Like
yeah,
I've had that happen too, where people wanted to debate me, and it's like Ian Danskin of Innuendo Studios here on YouTube, he made a great point that like when the right often says debate, they don't mean like a debate, like a real debate. They
mhm,
mean this weird spectacle where they could accuse you of things and you have to constantly refute
yeah,
everything with facts. And then,
exactly,
but and they like drum up. It's like pro wrestling. It's the most
yeah.
asinine shit, and yet some people still really
That's
like it.
and that's and I think I may have like have a better opinion of this if the ones that I've seen weren't so bad. But
Hmm.
that's like usually what happens. And I've even like ContraPoints. I remember one of the early ones that she did, like, but like when she was just starting, or not just starting, but like maybe like a year ago or something.
Hmm.
And it was I can't remember what channel it was. It was like a smaller channel, but literally it was basically what you said. Like, well, they were basically asking her to defend their like feminist boogeyman, like this straw man they have
Right.
made of feminism. Is like, well, why do feminists do this? Explain why feminists say this.
Hmm.
And it was all just, and that's like what the whole stream was. And I was like, this is like, what is this?
It's that, and I mean, like, I've totally fallen victim to that. Like last year, I was just like, hey, in just genuine naivety of me, I was like, let's bridge the gap between people who are more conservative and liberals, and let's talk about feminism, let's talk about social justice in this way that's not like really angry and conflicted and like screaming names at each other. And at first it started okay, where these like guys almost universally were like, wow, suddenly a reasonable feminist,
Yeah.
right? They started out that way, and I was like, all right, so I'm getting somewhere. I was not getting anywhere. And
Yeah.
um and then suddenly the second you make a point, it's refuted with something that's complete shit. Like they're like, but what about women who do this? And I'm like,
Mhm.
women are not a hive mind. And it's
Right.
like, what about men who get raped? And it's just like, no one's saying that that's not a thing. And it
Exactly.
suddenly spins out into this infinite, uh, shit show where ultimately you're just wasting your time. And
Right.
that's why it's not really a debate, because ultimately the person on the right never set out to even consider changing their mind at all. If they were to ever give me genuine, real reasoning or evidence for any of the right-wing stuff, I would change my mind or really, really think about it. They've never done that, and they would never change their mind, and that's why it's not really a debate.
Have you spoken to ContraPoints at all about this? By chance?
No, I mean, unfortunately I got into a bit of a argument on her Twitter, and I feel really bad because I forgot to like unlink her from it, because I was basically saying something similar to what I was saying here, and a lot of the people opposing her going to this event were talking to me and arguing with me about it, and it sort of spun out of control, as Twitter tends to do. And but she has made some pretty public statements about it, and I understand her point. I understand the people who are suspicious and worried about it, but ultimately I think that what she's doing is for the greater good.
Yeah. I'm also just like fearing for her. Like it's not going to be fun. And I'm like, I would never do that, but if I did do that, I would probably just, I don't know. I don't think I could get through it.
Yeah.
It'd be like 10 minutes and I'd be like, I'm done. And that's another thing. Like, is it worth that even?
Right. And yeah, like at the end of this whole thing last year, where I was like, I'm fucking done with talking to you guys. This is a nightmare. This is, we're not getting anywhere. Oh my God. I realized that I had wasted my time, and that almost anyone who is attempting to like have a conversation on their terms is wasting their time, because it's just weird manipulation after manipulation. And so, yeah, I do genuinely believe that for a large portion of it, it's just going to be an exhausting, you know, psychically painful waste of her time, with the exception of that she might poke a few holes in the bubbles of some of these people in the audience. And if she can do that, then bless her heart. Honestly, I could not do that. I would not be able to tolerate it. Just, my brain would explode with frustration. But she said on several occasions that it doesn't bother her the way it bothers a lot of people. And that is a superpower. Like I cannot.
Yeah. I guess you just have to really go in there and just really have a plan and know exactly what you're going to do, and all that, and like keep at the back of your minds, like I'm not debating Blair White.
Right.
And I don't know, is there any like specific tactic or plan do you think one should use in that situation? Like how should they engage the questions and things like that?
I mean, I think it's so easy. And like, I'm certainly not above getting incredibly frustrated with conservatives when they're just like, but Hillary, this, like I'm not above that. But I think what does help is really keeping in mind that whoever, like if it's Blair White or like Dave Rubin or, you know, Paul Joseph Watson or any of these hucksters who are being paid by Republican think tanks, like just keeping that in mind, that they are salesmen. They're there to sell something to you, to sell a point of view to you, to your vote, yourself as a voter. And so that you must also be there in that capacity, sort of, even though you're not probably getting paid very nearly as much. You know, you are there to promote an idea and not take the sort of weird manipulative things they do to you personally. You have to kind of disconnect yourself from that. I'm not sure I'd be capable, honestly. Like it's a superpower I do not possess. But
yeah, I definitely wouldn't. I don't even think that, and that's another thing too. Like, I don't think I would be good at it. I mean, maybe if I like practice, but I think that's, I mean, I think ContraPoints is competent at, you know, like a public debate, but
yeah.
I think that's a big part of it though. Cause like, for example, that's like part of debating. Like, as much as we would like to say just like knowing stuff and being right would be enough, like debate in and of itself is just a skill that not everyone has. And if someone were to try this and they were not a good debater, I think that could end up causing more harm than good. Like
Yeah,
even if they were on the right side.
that's absolutely true. And one of the reasons I stopped, with the exception of my frustration and brain melting, was like I was like, I'm clearly not capable of doing this without being like, I don't know, maybe you're just dumb. Like I couldn't stop like getting to that point. And so I was like, clearly, I am not the person. I am not the chosen one. But ContraPoints is very educated. She's really funny too, and she's very charismatic. And I think that that's a big plus in her direction, because that is the difficulty that people on the left, progressives have, is that often we don't have that sort of, we could be very dry, we could be very academic, and even when we're right, that's really alienating to people. And that like, I think even ContraPoint has pointed that out in her videos, that before, that we can just be so we can be very reactionary, we can be very defensive and pithy, because we're like, why don't you just understand basic facts? And and it is frustrating, but that's not how you market things to people, you know?
Right. I'm definitely guilty of that.
Right.
I think I'm laid back for the most part, but I'm like I'm really strident when it comes to facts. Like I just can't deal with people that don't believe facts.
Right. And that's the big war that's happening right now with like conservatism, is like the facts have been for decades coming out in opposition to Republican ideas and conservative ideas. They're like, these are the facts. This is what we have found through our studies, through science. And suddenly, sort of what's happened is they're like, well, maybe science is wrong. Like, exactly. Have you considered that facts aren't real? Alternative facts. And that's what they're doing, is like, it's a war on reality. It's a war on reason. And that's very dangerous. It's not great.
It's not good. And then, so I get, like, how do you counter that? You just like keep saying the facts, I guess, or you just have to find a better marketing campaign for facts. Like,
and I mean, it's for us. Yeah, I think there's many things that need to happen, and one of them is that we just have to vote people who do the alternative facts. Well, maybe science is wrong. We have to vote them out of office. That's a really important part of it, is that they just have to go. But the other thing is like, we do probably need to work on the way we, like, our optics and how we present these things to people, how we present ourselves as progressives. And so one great example is like the Democratic Party, which not ever, I'm an independent, but I do support overwhelmingly, the Democratic parties most of the time. They have a real problem with marketing their ideas and marketing like what they're for. And it's and also there's a lot of infighting in the Democratic Party, where the one of the things that the Republican Party has really good is that until recently, I guess, is that they're all rowing in the same direction. They're united as like a force for just fucking people over. And they're just like, we're just going to do this together. And it works. It's very like they stay united. They're a united front of bullshit. And Democrats,
it's the same thing on YouTube. Like,
yes,
the people that vaguely hate SJWs, like they just all just band together, even though some of them like have like wildly different like political views, but they're just like on this one topic, just because of this one thing, they've all decided to like band together. And I mean, I think that's part of the reason why they're often more successful.
Right. Yeah, they absolutely fall in line very easily. And one of the reasons I've found personally, is from my observations, I guess, is that it's because social justice people can be really annoying, and we can, like, there's this frustration with like annoying people who are always in your face, like and that's not a great way to reach people who are making bad decisions. Like, the naming and shaming and the call out culture and stuff like that. I definitely understand the reason behind it, but it's like really not the best way to like win people over to your cause. And I know people who have become way more conservative simply because they just felt feminists were annoying, and
Yeah.
they didn't like the way it didn't feel good. It didn't feel good what
Yeah.
they were saying. And I mean,
Yeah. I
should
mean,
we pander to that? But I mean, you know.
I, I, I've went through a phase myself. Like I tell people all the time, like I probably could have been an anti-feminist
Mhm.
if the, if the stars aligned in the right way, because
Mhm.
I definitely went through a phase where I was just like annoyed with feminists, and or at least annoyed with the image of feminists that I had because of like Tumblr and like BuzzFeed and shit like that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I feel the
And
same way. I can barely go on Tumblr because it to this day I'm just like, oh God. But I never had a Tumblr. I'm a little too old for that. The what I try to keep in mind, because I feel the same way where I'm just like, stop doing that, um, is I try to think that so many of these people who are on Tumblr and on Twitter and Instagram and screaming at people about whatever, you know, social justice issues in a way that's very alienating to people, is a lot of these people are young
Mhm.
and they're just trying, like they're really passionate, and this is like their passionate moment when they're sort of coming of age and understanding, like they're trying to figure out what it means to be progressive for their generation. And that's just as awkward and fumbling and weird as it was when we were kids, but we didn't put it out all on the internet.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this, I think this applies, and I get accused of ageism all the time. Like I'm 32 and I'm like always talking shit about how young people don't know anything. But
Yeah. We're the same age. Yeah.
oh yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I feel like I learned recently that Blair White's like 23 or 24, and I'm like,
Right.
well, okay, that explains everything. And that probably that's like probably offensive to, because I think most of my audience is like like 23 to
Mhm.
something like that. But I don't know, that I think that plays a big role. It's just like a lot of people that just, and I'm not saying I'm like old or anything, but
Mhm.
you know when you're 23, you haven't done anything. Like you don't have a lot of life experience, and so
Right.
like I think your views are going to be limited, like your perspective is going to be limited, which can lead to you having like shitty ideas about the world.
Right. Yeah. I was sort of put in my place when I was young. I don't actually remember how I got this idea, but like around 16, I sort of started to hold on to the idea. I'm like, this makes sense now, but I'm like 16, I'm 18, I'm 20. I probably don't know what the hell is going on because I'm a kid and I don't know anything.
Yeah,
And that kept me out of many poor
that's good.
decisions.
I feel like most teenagers do not have that kind of self-awareness.
It was my one point of self awareness. Everything else was a shit show. But I was like, I'm probably stupid. Probably stupid. But it made me very paranoid because I second
Yeah.
guessed everything that I did. With Blair White, like I've watched several of her videos. I've watched her debates. Like she's working. She's glad to be
Mhm.
working, and she's making a living. She's getting a lot of validation from people. Um, it
Yeah.
doesn't seem like she genuinely believes anything that she's saying. She just knows that it's sort of the right thing to say if she wants to continue doing what she's doing. And
Yeah.
yeah, I
The
feel.
validation is a big problem too, and but I guess there's no stopping that,
Mhm.
because you talk about the kids on Tumblr, but that's just people like writing into their blog, and maybe sometimes it'll get picked up, but like when you have like a YouTube channel with hundreds of thousands of subscribers and everyone's like fawning over you and telling you how right you are,
Mhm.
like that's like really bad for like an 18-year-old to be hearing, like.
It's not. It's probably not healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, this is something that I've thought about with people like Blair White, and I feel the same way about like Tommy Lahren, if you remember her from The Blaze,
Yeah.
and all, like neither of those women would have a career if they were not hot, and that's like that's the conservative thing, is like those women would not have a stake or a job in conservative punditry if they were not extremely beautiful, which both of them are. if they were to get, gain a lot of weight, or, happen to be more masculine, or happen to whatever, like they're producing an image for the conservative, movement. And that is sort of, there's a tokenism there, there's a validation, but they also have to fit into the very, very strict, boundaries and confines of like what conservative men feel femininity should look like. And if they didn't, they would not have careers. So yeah.
I mean, I can see that. I feel like it's not my place to say that, but
I'll say it.
Yeah, I will gladly let you say that.
I'll say it. And it like, that's, when I just dropped something off my desk. Don't mind that. I did check out Theron Meyer a little bit, but I didn't really have the time to. That's why I'm not really speaking about her, because I don't know. But the one thing I did see is that she was talking about how women in the trans community tend to gravitate towards doing porn, because there's great demand there, and you have a hard time getting employment. And I was like, and then some women are very uncomfortable with that. And like, I'm like, I get that. I understand that. But there is a certain amount of exploitation from these conservative, like, huckster jobs, where basically you are coming on as like a token trans woman or a token woman saying, I'm here too. And I believe all of these things. And it's not just white conservative men, because that would be weird. That would mean there was some sort of identity bias.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I made a video not too long ago, maybe I don't know, maybe like a year ago or something, but it was kind of before I understood that there were these like communities of progressives and anti-feminists and stuff on YouTube. This is before I like really knew about that. I just kind of only like heard glimpses of it, but I made a video that basically about how I was starting to notice that all these like skeptic channels, like they're like talking a bunch of dumb shit lately. And that's kind of weird. And I in the video I mentioned I said most of them are white men. And that they didn't like that, I'll tell you that.
That went over. I bet it went over just great.
And I got and I don't know, there was, I don't know, at least a dozen response videos to it. And that was like a big point in like all of the videos. It's like, well, what about this? What about the 2 black dudes that do it? What about the 1 trans one? Like
right. Yeah, and that's there's a woman on Fox News. I think she's still there. Her name's Michelle Malkin, and she's an Asian American, and she wrote a book basically that was all about the defense of the internment camps during World War II, where they put Asian families in internment camps. And she was like, it's fine, it's great. And I wrote a whole book about why it's great. And I'm Asian, which makes it okay. And like, she's a token, and she made a ton of money being that's the difficulty, is that there is a lot of money to be made in pandering to conservatives. And so when people, getting back to my point that I had a while ago, people worry about like ContraPoints going to this thing and giving them money, and basically helping financially support their conservative club or whatever. Like, there's money in conservative media. There's a lot of it. And so I wouldn't worry too much about, like, they're not going to run out of money for their conservative club. They've got money. And there's always old conservative men willing to shell out and write a check for a conservative political cause. And so it just seems negligible to me that she should be, making money for them in any way. It's just,
I think the idea of keeping them from making money, like, I don't really buy that, but I think the idea is you personally shouldn't help them get money. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like,
yeah, and that makes sense. And this person in the comments has actually mentioned this is true. They did end up negotiating that everything was going to go to the Trevor Project. So all the proceeds that came in that they were going to pay ContraPoints, I guess,
Okay.
goes to the Trevor Project, which is a suicide hotline,
Yeah.
and that's wonderful. That's great. But before they negotiated that, people were pretty upset, and that sort of sparked a question about whether or not it's right to do. If it's right to either make money for them or take money from them, sort of like a deal with the devil.
Right. So do you think that there's a difference between you like hosting that on your platform versus you going on their platform and doing it?
I
Like,
do. Yeah. I mean, if it obviously it's up to the individual, but I wouldn't host their stuff on my platform
mhm.
because I just think that it is a form of spreading it, and I can understand. I mean, my audience, which is overwhelmingly progressive, doesn't need to hear that stuff because they already know better. It's just sort of a regurgitation of like kindergarten,
Yeah.
stuff. And so if they want ContraPoints on their show and they want to expose their audience to people who to like somebody like ContraPoints who's really smart and really funny and charismatic and has a lot of better points than the other people that they're bringing on, then go for it. Like, sure. But I personally wouldn't have it on my channel.
Yeah. Well, are you familiar with Destiny, the YouTuber or streamer?
No, I
Destiny.
don't think so.
Well, he's mostly known in gaming, but he also is known for like having debates with people on his YouTube channel. Oh, he does it on his stream and then uploads it on his YouTube channel. But he had like I think he got on a lot of people's radar when he had a debate with John Tron.
Oh boy.
Yeah. You literally haven't heard of that?
I haven't heard about that, but I got a lot of flack about JonTron a while ago. I made the mistake of crossing paths with the JonTron fan base, and I paid dearly.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Destiny, like he is constantly like debating like the most ridiculous people ever, like like white supremacists, white nationalists, and he debates like more like normal people as well. He had this guy Amos Yee on there recently who's like pro pedophilia. So like and he's kind of, but the thing is he's like really smart and really good at debate, and he usually like destroys the person that he's debating. But it's hosted on his stream, on his channel, in front of his audience, and he's like, I mean, he's like generally I would say progressive, but a lot of progressives don't really like to associate with him because he's like problematic. Like he calls people autistic and stuff like that.
Not the best. I wouldn't do that myself.
Right. But anyway, like, and I think a lot of people appreciate the fact that he kind of like, he's really good at exposing the ridiculousness of people's arguments. But it's like in front of his audience. So it's like, I don't know how much, like he argues that part of his goal is to give other people like examples of ways to argue against this stuff. Because a lot of people just aren't good at it's hard to argue against a lot of this stuff because you don't know what to say. And he said that's part of his goal. But I wonder like how useful that is. Like it's almost just like, hey, come watch me like pummel this guy. That sort of thing.
Well, I mean, it's again, like that's a difficult situation, sort of, because if you bring those people onto your channel, you are helping spread their message, which I honestly, there is a certain point where like no one's going to be like, wow, pedophilia, never thought about that before, now I'm a pedophile. Like most people are not going to be like, wow, white supremacy, amazing, this is a newfound thing that I've never heard of and I'm totally for now. But there is a spectrum of like weird conservative ideas, and should you bring those people on? I honestly, I can't say too much because I've never seen him. It does sound like he's doing it for an economic reason, because so much of YouTube now is like you have to stand out by doing something outrageous, and bring on the most outrageous guest. And what's more outrageous than like a pro pedophile person, or like or a Nazi, or any of these other people? That brings in those people's audiences, which are usually weird and creepy, but they have an audience, and then yeah, exposing your audience to those people, it makes me think like, don't bring them on unless you're going to win. And if he's winning, great, but I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it personally, just because I wouldn't want to interact with those people or really give them.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wouldn't do it, but it's interesting to see someone who's actually like good at it do it, and like maybe you could be so good at it that you could actually change someone's mind. I don't know. Like, I think a lot of this has been predicated on the fact that you just can't change anyone's mind, especially like some of these people where it's, they probably don't even really believe it or care about it that much. But I wonder if someone could be so good at making compelling points that it could actually change someone's mind, or at least get someone to like consider what they're consider their ideas more closely.
If you can do that, and I think that you can, because I've heard people I've seen people say specifically to ContraPoints, like, I never really thought about it this way, and this is actually like kind of blowing my mind, and it's helped them sort of move away from intense conservatism. But I don't think that you can do that in a live debate, especially because of just people's reactions and their emotional defenses. Like, they're there. The problem is that debate, the whole concept of debate is lost, really, where it's sort of like an intellectual fight now, when it's never was originally supposed to be that. It was supposed to be an exchange of ideas and an exchange of facts and studies and things like that. But this is, people come wanting to win, and they want to, they don't want to be embarrassed, especially in front of a live audience. So they're not going to change their mind from that. But if in the privacy of their own home, late at night, when they're feeling, safe and not vulnerable, they can watch a video of like yours or ContraPoints or somebody's, and like in the darkness be like, oh wow, maybe I'm wrong. And I think that's in those private times and those private spaces, people are much more likely to be open-minded. Instead of live debate. There's just too much of people's egos.
ContraPoints has actually said that she's probably going to do more like private discussions instead of public. Because I mean, she was on a run where she was just talking. I guess anytime anyone asked her, she just said yes.
And I mean, it's good. It's good for her channel. It helps bring people to her channel, and I understand that. And it's especially if she's trying to reach conservative people who are like, she's trying to bring people back from the brink, then that's good. Yeah, get into the conservative spaces and pull people toward you. That's positive. But ultimately it does get, I can see why she's stepped back and been like, maybe we should put the brakes on this a little bit because it's getting kind of weird. I can understand that. I think that she's a force for good, in a way that many of us could never tolerate doing, because so much of this work is so frustrating and just exhausting.
Yeah, and honestly, like, if it was like almost anybody else, like, I would probably be a lot more pessimistic about it. But I don't know. I'm just like, I'm a fanboy of ContraPoint, so I back anything she does.
She's got the magic. I know. And if it was like somebody else, I'd be like, I don't trust you to bring up our sword and shield and fight in our honor. But I do trust her because just from seeing her work, and I'm just like, yes, same.
Yeah. So I mean, I was never on the boat where it's like, just don't do it. Like, don't engage them at all. Don't debate them. I guess I was just like sort of hesitant. I guess I'm just like weighing it out. Like, is it worth it? I guess. And like, that sort of thing. I guess that was sort of like the main idea of my point. Uh, and so it like at the end of the day, I wouldn't begrudge anybody that wanted to do that. Like
Mhm.
it's just, if you want to do it, go for it. I don't want to be a part of it. Um
Right. Yeah. I can
and
see where you're coming from.
yeah. Um but I don't know. I don't know if it's good. I guess that's the part that I mainly am different on, is like, is it good to do it? I'm just kind of like, it's whatever. I don't know
Mhm.
if it's good though, because it's just because of the potential negative consequences.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, I think, yeah, and I had to sort of think about that quite a lot myself. And what I came to was like, there's an upside and there's a downside to both options of like either, debating these people and bringing them, sort of engaging their ideas, um, or to not. There's good and bad. The bad is that if you never interact with them, then everything continues to fester without any question, and those arguments never get questioned in arenas when they really should be questioned. And so they you people kind of remain in the cave, and sort of can't really get out without any help or new information. But if you interact with their ideas, you risk luring more people to the cave. And so, but I personally, in ContraPoint's place, I believe that because she is the type of artist and creator that she is, and because she's smart and she's charismatic, I think I trust her to do it. Whereas with other people on an individual basis, I probably wouldn't trust everybody.
yeah, yeah, I think I'm the same way. It's kind of like what I was saying earlier, like someone who wasn't skilled or wasn't knowledgeable going in there could be a disaster and just
Hmm.
might be bad for everybody.
Hmm.
So I think that's an important step. But I guess so far, like we're good on that front, because it's most people don't want to do it. So
Hmm.
uh,
Well, yeah, and that's the difficulty is like Republicans are always and conservatives are always saying like they don't want to debate us because they don't have an argument. It's like no, it's because you're actually so stupid that we can't handle it. And there's no fighting stupid. There's no fighting just bullshit. It's just bullshit, and there's nothing to argue. You're just wrong, and so that can it's brain melting. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I don't think you haven't said anything that I just like outright disagree with. So like, I mean, I think you're basically right. It's just, it kind of, when these things kind of happen, I just get I shudder a little bit on the
Hmm.
inside. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like, okay, I don't know.
Yeah, and it's understandable that suspicion and that paranoia is very valid because um, these conservative groups are often very manipulative and they're looking for ways to, they're not trustworthy people. And I don't want to say specifically the people she's talking to, but like the like hucksters and the internet pundits and all of them, they're not, you can't really trust them to, argue with intellectual honesty. You can't trust them to edit things in a way that's like
Mhm.
the facts. You can't trust them to do a lot of those things, and their audiences can be largely weird and misogynistic and bigoted and violent. So I wouldn't go.
Yeah.
but
All right.
but that suspicion
Yeah.
is definitely valid.
Yeah, my personal strategy has been to just pretty much ignore it, all of them.
Hmm.
Like, um, I mean, I guess not necessarily that, but like, I just think there's an inherent like bad faith in a lot of this stuff, and
Yes, definitely.
I just choose not to engage that. Like, I just feel like I'm being played for a fool if I engage it.
Hmm. Yeah, and sometimes I happened the other day on Twitter where I was like, I got roped into some stupid argument with Jeff Holiday about some fucking shit, and then like, you know, I'm 6 messages in and I'm like, what am I doing? I know he's full of shit. I know he did, like, he's fucking with me on purpose. I know he is. What am I doing with my life right now? And I cut it off right there.
Yeah,
so it's easy.
I fall for that too.
Yeah.
What I always fall for is like the sort of concern troll type people that are like, they start off like very civil. It's like just asking questions, that type of stuff. Like I fall for that all the time.
Right.
And then like, you know, like 20 minutes later, you realize you're actually being trolled.
Right. So innocent. I just don't understand. I don't get it. Can you explain? I'm just worried about whatever bullshit. No.
And then when you get frustrated, then they're like, I'm being perfectly civil.
Just asking questions. Why are you mad? Yeah. It's a weird form of manipulation that's like a learned behavior from a lot of these like hucksters, internet hucksters. Yeah. Anyway, I'm afraid I have to take my leave, but it's been awesome talking to you.
Yeah, it was a great conversation. I'll probably upload it as a separate video if you want to watch it back, and if anyone else wants to watch it back.
Okay.
But yeah, thanks for coming on the stream.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Bye, everybody.
You guys go subscribe to Super Princess Tea Party.